Hello, everyone. This is Omar from the third rail. What's up, everybody? Still have that thing on my lips, man. Can't get rid of it. I cut myself shaving. So, how's everybody doing? Are we doing all right, man? The world is on the brink. The world's on the brink. Our Jewish brothers keep on killing the Palestinians. The United States is testing intercontinental missiles that carry nuclear weapons. Russia is sending warships to Cuba. What could go wrong? What could go wrong? The world is on the brink of fucking World War III, man. We're about to have World War III. Joe Biden didn't even know where the fuck he's at, man. He doesn't even know where he's at, man. We're about to go out, man. Nuclear, man. You understand? But let's go back to the heydays before we start the show. Let's do a little rhyme from the days of rap, man. Let's go back in time to Run DMC when he rapped this and said, let me see if I could do it. Ready? You ready? I'm the king of rock. There is none higher. Sucker MC should call me sire. To burn my kingdom, you must use fire. I will stop rock till I retire. Now we rock the party and come connect. Our cuts on time and rhyme connect. Get the right to vote and we'll elect. And other rappers can't stand us, but give us respect. That's right, Run DMC. Went back deep, man. Went back deep. So we have a show today. We have a great show today. We're going to talk about Jim Crow. And was it good for black families? And we're going to talk about the usual. We're going to have Piers Morgan on the Palestinian issue. And we're going to have some reaction to some videos here and there, you know. Stick with me, man. Let's have a good time, man. Did you like the rhymes, man? The rhymes were beautiful. Wasn't I? Every day I'm going to do like a rhyme. I'm going to go back in time. Rap, man. You got to get rid of this, man. You guys got to send me something to get rid of this shit on my lips, man. I look like I'm an alcoholic. You know how alcoholics get the busted lips? I don't drink. Anyway, let's start the show. So, Jim Crow. After the Civil War, when the South was defeated, during the Reconstruction era, let me go back a little bit. When the emancipation of blacks, when the slaves became free in the South, some towns and some cities, they had a lot of slaves, and sometimes they were either the majority or even equal numbers to white. So when the Civil War ended, and the slaves, Black Americans, were given the right to vote, during the Reconstructive era from around 1865 to 1877, before they made that deal to get rid of federal troops, blacks enjoyed great freedom. And what they did is they were electing black officials, governors, senators, congressmen, because they had the vote. In some cities, they outvoted the whites because the whites will split the vote while the black will vote for the black guy. And the whites, you know, people think Jim Crow is not all just racism. It was more of a terrorist movement to ethnically cleanse blacks from the South, to get rid of them so they run away to the North. So they used a lot of laws and they used a lot of violence, such as lynching and things of that nature, to scare. The whole purpose was to thin the black population from the South. Everybody knows that. Anybody who should know history. So that competition. So when Jim Crow came into place, they made it harder to vote. They made it hard to think. But why am I saying all this stuff? So this week, Byron, a guy named Byron Donalds, who's a Republican, black Republican from Florida, I think he's very bright and he has a good future in politics because he's very strong. He knows how. He's from Brooklyn. You can't go wrong. He's a black man from Brooklyn. He's from what I am. We grew up in the same fucking borough. We crazy mother MTF. You understand? So this is what happened. Let me see if I can find it. Is this it?
Worked, obviously. No.
Okay, that's not it. Still there. Sorry about that. Okay, this is the
United States, the Supreme Court.
Get out of here. Jesus Christ. What the hell happened? You see this is why, Omar, you need a producer. Can't find a producer. These white boys don't want to be no producers for me, man. Why don't you want to be producers for me? All right, is this it? I think this should be it. Yeah.
Till could be brutally murdered with.
Okay, let's listen. Maybe it's here. Okay.
During Jim Crow, the Black family was together.
Hakeem Jeffries responded to Byron Donalds' comment comparing Democratic actions to Jim Crow by emphasizing the historical context.
Hold on, this guy's a fucking douchebag anyway. Jim Jeffries is a what you call is owned by Nancy Pelosi and the he's not he's still a slave. I know people are gonna get upset by me saying that, but I'm gonna say it like it is, and I'm not gonna lie to you, man. Try to look for the video first.
I just like I don't want.
I go through the whole shit, man. All right, let me go back here.
Significance of such comparison.
Okay, Byron Donalds, who's a Republican congressman from Florida, said that Black families were more together during Jim Crow than they are now. That Black marriages, they had more Black marriages, and Blacks were more conservatives during Jim Crow than now. Now the problem is he didn't have to use the word Jim Crow, because Jim Crow was a racist, violent movement that killed and lynched Blacks and deprived them of their rights to drink and eat in certain places. The whole idea of Jim Crow, like I told you, was to get rid of the Blacks from the South so they won't be competitive in elections. So the mistake he made is he should not compare that. Even Candace Owen has said the same thing a couple of years ago, that Blacks did better under Jim Crow. No, most Americans, everybody who lived in America, were very conservative and marriage-minded. Everybody got married because that was a thing to do. So whites were conservative, Blacks were conservative. Anybody who lived, because Blacks will mirror their white counterparts. So we lived in a different America at that time. Even if you look at before the 1820s, when they started messing up when they started with the so-called the crazy 20s, before the 1820s, for the 1920s and 1910s, if you saw pictures of beaches, you saw white women who were wearing full dresses and scarves. They were in the beach. The same thing right now, they're making fun of Muslims who do that. Christians, Americans did that. So everybody's conservative. So what he wanted to say is, he wanted to blame it on this time, warfare, or the fathers leaving the family, on how warfare destroyed the Black family by giving incentives of food stamps to single families instead of marriage. No. I'm going to tell you why the Black family was destroyed, not because of the Great Society program, is that Blacks have no equity. They have no equity. They don't own property. They don't own houses. They don't own that. So it's like they were just born out of nowhere and they don't have nothing like white generational wealth. So Black men did not do well in society. They were not able to earn enough living for their wife and their children, and culture came in, and drugs and the 60s and all that stuff came into play. But this is what it is. It is what it is. You have to put that into, like right now, white men are doing the worst they ever did in history. 30% of men in America, majority white, are virgins or never have access to women. And 70% of women are in universities and colleges. You understand? So it's culturally, it has to do with that. So let's watch this video and see what he said.
Jeffries highlighted the severity and real impact of Jim Crow laws, which involved systemic racial discrimination and violence. And he suggested that invoking such a comparison diminishes the true horrors of that era. He also reiterated the importance of understanding history accurately to ensure informed and respectful discourse on current issues.
Mr. Speaker, it has come to my attention that a so-called leader has made the factually inaccurate statement that Black folks were better off during Jim Crow. That's an outlandish, outrageous, and out-of-pocket observation. We were not better off when a young boy named Emmett Till could be brutally murdered without consequence because of Jim Crow. We were not better off when black women could be sexually assaulted without consequence because of Jim Crow. We were not better off when people could be systematically lynched without consequence because of Jim Crow. We were not better off when children could be denied a high-quality education without consequence because of Jim Crow. We were not better off.
Jeffrey is a good speaker, but he's not. He doesn't own himself. He's not his own man. He's owned by Schumer and Pelosi. He's owned by the people who put him as the leader of the Democratic Party. So he could talk all you want. He knows how to talk a good game. He's from Brooklyn. We're all from Brooklyn right here. Me, him, and the other guy who said that Jim Crow was better.
When people could be denied the right to vote without consequence because of Jim Crow. How dare you make such an ignorant observation? You better check yourself before you wreck yourself.
That's right. That's Brooklyn talk right there. That's Brooklyn talk. You better check yourself.
Now, Byron Donalds clarified his comments about the comparison to Jim Crow laws by explaining that his intention was to highlight what he sees as the overreach and hypocrisy of the Democratic Party's policies. Donalds criticized the use of race-related rhetoric by Democrats, especially President Biden, arguing that such references are inappropriate and diminish the historical severity of Jim Crow laws. He stated that his remarks were meant to underscore the importance of fair and legal elections and to push back against policies like the For the People Act, which he believes would harm the integrity of the electoral process. If you haven't seen the video, here it is.
I grew up with my mom. My dad and my mom, things didn't work out. As an adult, I look at my father and I say, bro, I don't know what happened, but you my father and I love you.
Wow.
I don't know what happened. I wasn't there.
Wow.
But I'm gonna tell you this, growing up, the one thing I knew I wanted to do, and this is not about my father, this is about what I wanted to do, is I wanted to be a father to myself.
Wow.
And so one of the things that's actually happening in our culture, which you're now starting to see in our politics, is the reinvigoration of black families with younger black men and black women. And that is also helping to breed the revival of a black middle class in America. You see, during Jim Crow, during Jim Crow, the black family was together.
That's right.
During Jim Crow, more black people were.
Here's the problem with this fucking guy. He's not making any sense. I'm going to show you why. Here. Hold on. Oh, man. Where are you? He's saying that he's talking about that middle class, that families, that men are not staying with in their family, they're not supporting their kids, blah 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 blah, and all that stuff. But the problem with this guy is, hold on, is it? Let me see. This is his wife. His wife is white. He is married to a white woman, so I don't think he has the right. What's up, man? Who's my brother? What's up? What's up? Judy, man, Smith. What's up? How you doing? Welcome to the... So the whole idea is that he's speaking on Jim Crow, that it was better for black family. Now, the problem with this is... let me see if I could be there. Okay, here I am. The problem with this is he could marry a white woman at that time. He won't be able to have the family under Jim Crow laws. And second of all, how can you speak for black families if you're not married to a black woman and you're not taking care of a black woman? You know what I'm trying to say here is that you can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways, man. So either he misspoke, whatever he did, or he made a mistake. But Jim Crow was not good for black families or even for white families, because America could not continue to live as it was under a two-tier system as the as international human rights and things of that nature. So let's go back to the story if I could find it. Such an idiot here. I messed it up, didn't I? Remove. All right. Is this it? Yeah.
Women, at least
Oh gosh.
black female.
Shut up.
massacre.
I can't find it.
We were in Nusayrat camp. Special.
He goes at the same time.
Not just conservative, because black people always have been conservative minded, but more black people voted conservatively. And then HEW, Lyndon Johnson, and then you go down that road, and now we are where we are. What's happened in America the last 10 years, and I say it because it's my contemporaries, it's Wesley's contemporaries, you're starting to see more black people be married in homes, raising kids. It's when you home with your wife raising your kids, and then you look at the world, you're saying, now wait a minute, time out. This does not look right. How can I get something to my kids? It goes back to the conversation of generational wealth. Not just having a job, generational wealth. I'm looking at my kids. How can my kids be on my shoulders when they take off in life? That's what's happening.
Abby Phillip confronted Byron Donalds on CNN about his comments comparing Democratic actions to Jim Crow laws. She expressed that such comparisons trivialize the brutal historical reality of Jim Crow and suggested that his remarks were irresponsible and misleading. Phillip aimed to highlight the severity of the Jim Crow era and why it's important not to draw inappropriate parallels to current political disagreements. Here's what he had to say.
I want to just focus on really the substance of what you were saying or trying to say in that clip. What did you mean by black families were more together during Jim Crow?
Frankly, what that is about the empirical fact that before the Great Society, before Lyndon Johnson's policies, there was more black families united. The marriage rate in black America was significantly higher before the Great Society.
It has nothing to do with the Great Society. You have crack, you have heroin in the 70s, you have the generational gap of the 60s where people were just high and having free sex all over the place. Even the problem is he's not thinking, even white families got destroyed after the birth pill, after the 70s, with the feminist movement where women became men and men became women, everything just fucking upside down. So he's just blaming the shit on something else. The Great Society program was to help uplift poor white and black families. Nothing less, nothing more.
The period of time that coincides with that, obviously, is Jim Crow era. And then after the Great Society, the marriage rate in the black community plummeted significantly. The Great Society is a part of that reason, not completely, but it's definitely a part of that. And what you're seeing right now in America is a reformation of black families in America. That's a good thing, not only for the black community and for black families, but it's also a good thing for the country.
So what was the point of tying together the black family and Jim Crow specifically? I mean, Jim Crow, as you know, was...
he wants to be the vice president for Trump. So he was virtual singling. That's what he was doing. He was trying to get both sides.
Period of racial segregation, of racial terror. Why would you make that connection?
All I was doing was referring to the time periods when you talk about the historical timelines in America and coinciding with black families and what the marriage rate in black families are. The overarching point is obviously talking about what polling shows today, that about 25% of the black vote, depending on what poll you're looking at, is leaning towards supporting Republicans and supporting President Trump. The corollary to that is that when you're in a family unit, husband and wife, living together, working together, thriving together, you're raising your kids, your thought process is now talking about building generational wealth. What am I leaving to my children? What kind of communities do I want my children to come up in? What are the educational opportunities? What's going on with the economy? How does, and then to a broader level, how does foreign policy and all these other public policy issues flow into that? And so when you compare the terrible agenda of Joe Biden and what that's done to families in America, coinciding with the fact that you are seeing a reformation of black families in America today, which is an absolutely wonderful thing and needs to continue.
I'm going to say something that I have said a long time ago, maybe 2-3 years ago when I started talking on YouTube. Black Americans are probably more conservative than any other group in the United States. If you go on Sunday and drive around like black American neighborhoods, the churches are full. They are double parked, triple parked. Sometimes the whole street is closed. The churches. There's a village here in Long Island called Hempstead Village. There are there are probably more churches than there are houses. It's a black village. So what I'm trying to say is, black Americans are conservative. Only the Republican Party doesn't know how to attract them. Republican parties don't know how to, they got to work their game to get him involved and leave the Democratic plantation.
My view is it also coincides with a more conservative leaning and a more conservative mindset politically in those families.
One thing I really want to just get you to address is there were a lot of people who heard what you had to say, and a lot of them are offended by the idea that you would repeat Jim Crow 3 times in your comments as if to suggest that that was a time period because that black families were, in your words, together, because, in your words, black people were not just more conservative, they voted more conservatively. That's a good thing. I mean, it sounds like nostalgia. Do you regret using that time frame as a reference?
Nobody ever made nostalgia. That was never the point. It wasn't even about that. So where now I'm going to get my backup is, I didn't say that. I didn't even insinuate that. No, that is where the media and yes, Hakeem Jeffries and a lot of other people are taking
what exactly didn't you insinuate?
No, back up.
I'm just trying to understand what you're saying. What didn't you insinuate?
The premise of your question, I did not insinuate. That is what people are trying to weave into what I said. What I said is crystal clear. It's on my social media. Go to @ByronDonalds on X. You can see the full clip. Abby, I appreciate you playing the full clip. What you are dealing with right now is a political environment where now anything I might say or any major surrogate might say is going to be twisted into the lens of race. That was never the point, not the idea whatsoever.
I mean, just to clarify my questioning of you,
Sure.
I mean, I understand that this idea that you said it was better, you didn't use the words better. But when you talk about that time period, you're suggesting that because the black family was together, they were better off than they are now.
See, this is the problem, Abby.
So are you saying that that's not the case? That the black family was not better off when they were, in your words, together?
Abby, let me put it to you like this.
In the Jim Crow era.
Let's agree.
He was speaking to Al Sharpton, and he disrespected, oh, you better get it through your skull. He was fucking he got thuggish in the interview like a fucking idiot that he is. Just say I misspoke. Maybe it came out wrong. I'm sorry. I don't want my community to think that I said that. And it's all gravy after that. And you can avoid all this fucking twisting and twirling because you're trying to serve 2 masters. You want to appease your white following. Excuse me, white people. I love you all. But that's why he invoked Jim Crow. He wants to virtual single that shit and be a good boy. And second of all, he made a mistake. Because let's say if Donald Trump chooses you as vice president, you're going to add the black community to the vote. That's what he wants you for. He don't want you to bring more white people. He already got them. All you have to do is get him the black voters. That's what the game is all about.
On something. I am, obviously one of the better communicators in the Republican Party. Ooh. I know how to put words together. I do it very, very often. Wow. So I'm not going to say something that I do not agree with. Yeah. What America is seeing right now, especially Black America, is the gaslighting that unfortunately does happen in politics, where you take my comments and you want to weave your own political viewpoint into what I said. What I said is very clear.
I asked you to explain because I wanted to. What I want to undo is understand what you're saying here, because if you're making a comparison, you're saying the black family was together then, they're not together now, and you're using that to try to say that things are bad now. Well, first of all, let me just to set the table here. By pretty much every available measure, black families, black individuals in this country are better off today than they were during Jim Crow. Would you agree with that?
Abby, of course I would. I'm not making that point, and this is the problem.
There are more black millionaires than ever in history. Rappers are fucking millionaire. Rappers fucking rapping about guns and violence are multimillionaire, man. Sport players. Blacks are doing good in America. God bless America. They're doing good right now. I mean, I think you must understand them. I mean, if you are a Republican politician happen to be black, that's good. You know, I'm conservative, a bit conservative too, but you need to use a different language to attract black Americans to the tent, the Republican tents. First of all, you need to tell Trump he needs to shut the fuck up and stop talking about race. That's first. And second of all it takes is 5% of blacks jump to the Republican Party by 5%. Donald Trump will be president.
What Hakeem Jeffries did on the House floor, what Jamie Harrison, what the president of the NAACP, what the Biden campaign, because they're the ones who started this. It was really the Biden campaigns who were trying to cherry pick everything. They're trying to twist my words into saying something. I never said that. What I was talking about was specifically black families, and the point that black families being together.
You don't have a black family. You're married to a white woman, man. You have you don't. I probably have more rights than you to talk. My father is a black Arab. You don't have a black family. What the fuck are you talking about? You have no right to talk about anything.
Is a great thing for the black community. And you do have to acknowledge the empirical fact that before Lyndon Johnson's policies and the welfare state that was created in the United States, I'm not talking about good, bad, or indifferent.
What about,
black families were, black marriage rates were significantly higher.
Well, what about
They're
other
rising
things that
again in
have,
America. That's a good thing. We should celebrate that.
What about other things that may have contributed to the, maybe the decline in marriage rates, which, by the way, is not unique to black families. That's happening actually across racial groups. But what about other things? I mean, what about redlining? Do you think that had an effect on the black family? What about mass incarceration? What about the war on drugs, which was pushed by a Republican president whose advisor said it was specifically to target black people? What about all of those things?
Look, if you want to talk about redlining and a lot of the other policies that were put forward, quite frankly, by the Democrat Party, if you're going to go back to Jim Crow, because Jim Crow was Democrat policies.
Well,
that's what that was.
I know that you know
don't
this.
Cut me off when I'm trying to make a point.
Let me just,
Abby.
I have to correct on a factual point here. I know that you know that the Democratic Party and the Republican Party.
You see, now he's a fucking douchebag. Now he's starting to start using talking points. The Democratic Party was Jim Crow. Of course, they had the great realignment. When the Democratic Party saw the civil rights movements on the cusp of giving black people the right to vote in mass, the Democratic switched. The Democratic Party said, well, we got to embrace these new voters, an ocean of new black voters. And they did. They carried them for another 40 years. They never won the House for 40 years, a Republican. So they switched the rule. And what happened was the Dixiecrats, who are the racists or the Southern Democrats, they went to the Republican Party. Everyone switched over. So you can't say, well, the Democratic Party was a member of the KKK. Yeah, so who gives a fuck? But they switched in the 1960s. They did the great realignment. They were smart. While the Republican Party used the Southern strategy of using race and race buzzword to attract racist Southerners. It's very easy.
Party of today are ideologically not what they were during Jim Crow. You know that, Congressman. So to suggest that, the Democrats of 1920 are the same ideologically as the Democrats of today is inaccurate. So you can continue, but I wanted to...
That's not totally true, Abby. And I think if we want to have that conversation about the policy positions between Republicans and Democrats, we can have that conversation. But
one of the other things...
do you want to have a conversation?
One of the other things,
I'm trying to understand how you want this interview to go.
Since you brought it up on the conservative thing, the other thing that you said was black people voted more conservatively. Were you talking about them voting for Republicans?
In part, yeah, because that's just an empirical fact. That's what we know. That did happen. And the only corollary that I am making is that when families are together and now you're trying to find a way for you to build wealth within your family unit, you're thinking about public policy in a myriad of ways. Because at the end of the day, you want your children to be able to stand on your shoulders. I was very, very fortunate. My mother was able to build a platform for me to be able to stand on and to be able to achieve. Same for my sisters. I'm a very blessed individual because of that. My only point is that when you have a family unit, husband and wife living together, striving together, grinding together, raising children together, you start thinking about public policy in a myriad of ways. And my belief is that dynamic allows people to start thinking about public policy in a much more conservative way as opposed to a much more progressive way. That's my point.
That might be, I mean, I think you're a Republican, so you're entitled to that opinion. But I think what people are taking issue with is you made a couple of statements of fact. And one of the things I was asking you about whether you were talking about Black people voting for Republicans. You know, in the time period that you're talking about, the LBJ time period, they started voting for Democrats. And the reason is because of civil rights, because a Democratic president was passing bills that gave them rights. The Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act of 1965, the Housing Fairness Act. So do you acknowledge that when Democrats Black voters vote for Democrats, it's actually because there's a history there. There's a reason that they voted for Democrats in that time period, not because they were just getting welfare money.
Abby, let me be clear. I don't deny that. I think it's also important for the record to be clear that you had the vast majority of Democrats in the Senate were filibustering the 64 Civil Rights Act led by Robert Byrd, who, by the way, was a mentor to Joe Biden when he went into the United States Senate.
So what are your thoughts on Donald's comparison to Jim Crow? Were you offended by his comments? Do you think Donald's tried to backtrack or clarify his statement effectively? Let me know in the comments. I'll see you on the next video.
All right, I hope this lady doesn't fucking complain to YouTube, because I didn't know. I thought that was a fair thing. You know, go to her channel. All right. All right. So you heard from him. So let's hear from a white guy, right? So let's hear what's his name? There you go. Walsh, right?
An Apache helicopter, and there was a white car with special forces. The Apache started...
Judges. Now, I don't judge anyone based on the color of their skin
shut the fuck up. You know what? I need a producer. Anybody wants a job here? I got it. Okay, you know what we're going to do here? Let me see if he's still here. He's not here. All right, Jim, what's his name? I forgot. Matt Walsh.
Can be pretty sure of is that right now and for the last several months, the Democratic Party has been working on ways to attack every single one of those potential nominees, of course, and none of the names on the short list are a surprise, so they've presumably been digging up opposition research and monitoring everything these politicians say, hoping they can catch a slip up or take something out of context. And that's to be expected at this point, of course. But even with that expectation in mind, the attack that's unfolding right now on one of those potential vice presidential candidates, Congressman Byron Donalds of Florida, is worth talking about. It's maybe the single most revealing smear campaign of the election cycle so far. On Tuesday, Donalds was speaking at an event in Philadelphia, along with Texas Congressman Wesley Hunt. And the point of the event, apparently, was for the Trump campaign to reach more Black voters by speaking honestly about the challenges that Black communities are facing right now. Of course, the main challenge in Black communities, as I've said many times and many other people have said, is the epidemic of fatherlessness. It's the collapse of the nuclear family. There can't be any problem bigger than that when your nuclear family has collapsed.
Okay.
Black Americans have the highest rate of out-of-wedlock births as compared to every other racial group by far.
Okay.
Roughly 77% of Black children born in 2015 were out of wedlock. That's the most recent year I found data for this.
Okay.
Hispanics had a much lower rate at 56%, but still too high.
Right.
Followed by whites at 30% and Asians at 27%. All of those numbers are too high. But with the Black family, the numbers are, of course, the highest. It's not a coincidence, by the way, that if you were to look at a list of average household incomes in the USA by race, it would be the exact inverse of the fatherless list. So Asians have the highest household income, followed by white, then Hispanic, then Black. As far as I can tell, these numbers have held steady for decades. They've been consistent long enough that many people have come to believe that they're inevitable. But that's not true. There was, in fact, a time in American history where whites and Blacks had roughly the same chances of growing up in a single-family home. This was a period when most Black women got married before they had kids. And it's not ancient history we're talking about. I'm talking about the first half of the 20th century, and in particular the 1950s and 60s.
Days, yeah.
At the event in Philadelphia, Byron Donalds addressed all of this directly. He began by talking about his own personal experiences with fatherhood. And then he pointed out that two-parent Black households weren't always an anomaly. It didn't used to be this way. Watch.
During Jim Crow, the black family was together.
That's right.
During Jim Crow, more black people were not just conservative, because black people always have been conservative-minded, but more black people voted conservatively. And then H.E.W., Lyndon Johnson, and then you go down that road, and now we are where we are. What's happened in America the last 10 years, and I say it because it's my contemporaries as well as his contemporaries, you're saying now, wait, generational.
It's not even remotely debatable, in fact. From 1890 to 1950, black women had an even higher marriage rate than white women. And in the 1950s, the rates were about equal. Quoting from the Hoover Institution, in 1950, the percentages of white and African-American women aged 15 and over who were currently married were roughly the same, 67% and 64% respectively. But by 1998, the percentage of currently married white women had dropped by...
All right, shut the fuck up. You're just repeating the same shit. What are you trying to tell us, that black people are doing better by being fucking unable to drink and fucking shit in the same fucking bathroom as whites? Even if their marriages were higher, it doesn't see, my fucking chest is killing me. It doesn't prove that that Jim Crow was okay. Now we're gonna go to our favorite person. You know who it is. We had a lot of shit. Dave Rubin could suck my dick. Excuse my language. But let's add this to the
Palestinian territories. When you look at settler colonialism in the United States and the fact that Native Americans were pushed off of their land, nobody cares that Native Americans did not have an officially recognized.
Two things can be true at the same time. That is a fact that has been all but abandoned in the fevered and polarized commentary on the Israel-Hamas war. This weekend, Israeli forces raided a refugee camp in Gaza and successfully freed 4 hostages who've been abducted at a music festival on October the 7th. The Hamas-run health ministry says that 274 people died in that raid, including children and civilians. The IDF says it killed fewer than 100 in total, including Hamas terrorists. But whatever the real figure, it's obviously horrific. This was a refugee camp. Children were killed. They are clearly innocent. It doesn't make it any less horrifying that 4 innocent Israelis were snatched by terrorists at a music festival in the first place. And no less of a triumph.
Why do we have to mention October every time? Why?
These things can all be true at the same time. And the exact same logic applies to the war itself. Israel had no choice but to declare war on Hamas for perpetrating the worst massacre of Jewish people since the Holocaust. But it doesn't have a blank check signed in Palestinian blood to commit repeated atrocities without accountability, especially now that members of Netanyahu's own government are calling out his failure to explain the Israeli endgame.
They're all crazy.
So the very many people on both sides have attacked me for saying that. My question is simply this. What exactly is wrong with having a moral conscience about innocent people suffering?
Yeah,
more importantly, where is yours? Well, joining me now to debate this, journalist and broadcaster Emily Austin, Palestinian-American commentator Omar Badr, and the host of Part of the Problem podcast, Dave Smith. Well, Dave, let me start.
No, Dave Smith is the fucking best, man. Follow him. He's a great comic, and he's the smartest motherfucker I've ever heard.
With you, actually. A lot of people are part of the problem, it seems to me. The longer this war has gone on, the more entrenched people have got into their various tribes, and it's got increasingly toxic. There's no admission by anyone in those tribes of any wrongdoing on their side, and there's no attempt to come across the bridge and forge any kind of settlement, resolution, or peace. It seems to me like we are entering a really depressing phase of all this war. What is your view?
Well, I can't disagree with any of that. It's certainly depressing. I mean, listen, this has been going on since October. We're 9 months into this thing now, so it's been depressing for a while. And I agree with everything you said in your opening, that, of course, perpetrating violence against innocent civilians is wrong, no matter who does it. And that ought to be the basis for Western civilization. I mean, especially for people who like to kind of brag about Western civilization and the aspects where it's superior to others. The thing here, though, right, is that, as you say, Israel doesn't just have a blank check signed in Palestinian blood, but objectively, the reality seems to be that they do. and that they have unconditional support from the United States of America, the global superpower, no matter what. Even if our own president asks them not to do something and they do it, they still continue to receive this unconditional support. And of course, but as I've said to you before, Pierce, and I think this has kind of been the fundamental truth throughout this entire conflict, is that the only way you can really support Israel and what they're doing is if on some fundamental level you value Israeli life more than you value Palestinian life.
Okay, but
and if that's your starting point, fine. But if that's not your starting point, then you don't look at a mission that got 4 Israelis back and killed a bunch of children as a success.
Well, you see, that's where I have a real... Again, I've used this phrase many times in this war, a moral quandary, and I'll tell you why.
Oh, the quandary.
Should there be any limit, given that Hamas kidnapped these people, kidnapped young women, they kidnapped babies, they kidnapped Holocaust survivors, as well as murdering and wounding thousands and thousands of people? Should there be any limit to what Israel should be able to do militarily to rescue those hostages? From all the footage coming out, they planned this because they had information about where they were being held. They then sent special forces in to get them, came under heavy, heavy fire. And as a result of that, there were air cover sent in as well. And I'm just curious, what should be the limit on Israel to go and rescue these innocent kidnapped hostages?
Well, I mean, look, the limit should be, you know, in general, what the limit over this conflict should be is that if your number one priority is to get back the hostages, I think this whole campaign would have been conducted in a very different way than it has been over the last 9 months. But, you know, look, what's wrong, the essence of what makes it immoral to take these hostages is that these are innocent people who did not do anything to forfeit their natural God-given rights. But that also has to apply to innocent Palestinians who were not involved in October 7th or had no blood on their hands, were not members of Hamas militant groups. And these are, and we're describing millions of people who fall into that category. And so, you know, in an ideal world, the limit would be that you could only go after those people who were directly responsible. Now, in war, that's rarely the case, that there are no innocent casualties. However, I think a reasonable approach would be to expect Israel to do what they always claim that they're doing, which is just a blatant lie, which is that we're doing everything we can to avoid civilian casualties.
Okay.
But very clearly, that's not been how they've been conducting this war.
All right, Emily, let me bring you in here. I mean, look, I was joyous when I saw that the...
Now, you have to notice, I now look all blue. The Israelis always bring beautiful women, somebody who speaks fluent English. They try to mesmerize the viewer or distract him with the lie that person is saying. Now, I need you guys to calm the fuck down. She's pretty. She does look beautiful, but she's talking for a criminal entity. The Zionist criminal. So listen to what she say and digest the words and understand them, okay?
These hostages have been rescued, particularly Noah Agamani, whose story touched the world. Seeing this beautiful young woman being taken off on a motorbike, absolutely desperate with fear, and we all feared the worst for her.
She looked healthy as fuck.
Then the added human dimension of her mother having incurable brain cancer, and very sadly, it appears she's too far gone with the cancer now to even really understand what has happened with her daughter coming home, and wanted to live until she did get home. So the whole thing was tragic, but has the joy of her obviously being rescued. But when you look at these numbers, I mean, think about the Palestinian Health Authority numbers, is that historically, going back before October the 7th for decades,
correct,
or several decades anyway, when these figures released by the Palestinian Health Authority, which is Hamas run, have been verified independently, they've come back as reasonably accurate. I mean, not completely, but reasonably accurate numbers. We don't know whether these are reasonably accurate, the ones they're putting out now, but Israel admits to killing at least 100 people. We don't know how many of those are Hamas, and they say 274. Either way, it's clear from the scenes at the hospital that there have been a lot of women and children, innocent people, clearly, caught up in this. And so the same question for you, really. Yes, I'm joyous at the return of hostages. Yes, I think Israel absolutely has a right to go and get them.
That's not a question, man.
But at what cost
that's
to
an essay right
innocent Palestinian life?
Oof. She doesn't give a fuck.
What's interesting about these debates that end up becoming pretty chaotic is that everyone expects usually the Zionists, and I can't speak for anyone but myself, to be unapologetic about Palestinian casualties. Now, that's not me. That will never be me because I'm not a monster. Now, of course, Israel needs to do its best job to protect innocent civilians. Now, when I say innocent civilians, I don't mean the journalists or op-ed writers that are keeping hostages in their home. If you're complicit in keeping hostages or you're complicit in terrorism, to me, you're not a civilian, you're a terrorist as well.
I agree.
Now, with that being said, at the same time, my point is never, in my life, I will never say the Palestinians deserve it. This is what they get because of Hamas. My point is always the same. All of the blood spilled on both sides of this conflict are Hamas's fault. It's only Hamas to blame. Because if it wasn't for October 7th.
So the whole idea is just you got to blame the victim. That's like saying, well, she got raped because she should have been dressed like that. If she had been wearing shorts or skirts, she would never been raped. You blame the victim. The problem is the fucking occupation. You motherfuckers need to get the fuck off their land. That's it. Stop stealing their homes. You need to go back to Europe. That's it. Get out. Go. Go away. Where you came from? You're taking 78% of the land. You're still stealing from the 22% left. And you're telling me it's Hamas. The problem is Hamas. No, this is a resistance to an occupation. Under human rights, international law, under God's law, forget about international law, they have every right to resist. And they're going to continue. Whether you get rid of Hamas, there are going to be other different organizations until you come to terms with your occupation. If you want to live in peace, you will make that journey and give them their state that you're occupying, and you live on the one side, 2 states, everybody's happy. If you continue to think you're going to steal their land and push them into ghettos and not expect something in return, you're fucking psychotic. That's what it is. Good.
The idea for not being in Gaza. If it wasn't for the hostages being in civilians' apartments, guess what, Piers? There'd be no civilian casualties. And I also want to point out one thing, just a food for thought. Is it only IDF bullets that penetrate? Excuse me, does Hamas not fire back? Do you think Hamas is not responsible for casualties as well? So my point is never that it's justified. It's always the same. Every ounce of blood spilled needs to be blamed on Hamas, and the world needs to put international pressure on Hamas, because if the
yeah, you gotta blame the Hamas. They have F-35s, they have F-16s, they have Apaches, they have houses, they have the best tanks in the world. I mean, it's Hamas. That's what it is. It's not the settlers who stood on the land. It's not it's not them. It's Hamas. It's the people. Because why are they still alive?
Hostages were released time and time again. This war could have ended. Instead, where do they put them? In a refugee camp to maximize the casualties that everyone's going to face.
Before I go to Omar, I do think it's very disingenuous when I hear the argument, if Hamas just released the hostages, this war would be over. Israel's stated mission is not just to get the hostages back, it's to eliminate Hamas. So getting the hostages back is one part of it, but it's not. It is just not true to say if they handed them all back tomorrow, Netanyahu would not want the remaining Hamas terrorists to still be there. He would continue, as he's made very clear, to execute this war until he got rid of all of Hamas. So I just don't think it's
unreasonable. Did America not want Al Qaeda dead after 9/11?
You know, I'm just saying it's not right though. No, that's true, but I'm just saying it's not accurate. When I hear pro-Israeli guests say, well, if they just handed back the hostages, it'd be over. That it's not as simple as that. It wouldn't be over.
I'm saying it would minimize civilian casualties. Of course, you want to eradicate Hamas, because if you don't, October 7th will be December 7th, will be February 7th, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah,
my issue is that they make sure, Hamas makes sure to maximize the civilian casualties. And for some reason, the blame goes so...
No, ladies and gentlemen, Gaza is about 350 square miles. That's like a small fucking area. There's about 2.5 million people. It's all residential. It doesn't have any mountain. The whole area is residential. Whatever's left of it. Now, not only have you fucking destroyed 70% of that city, and you're complaining it's a civilian area, there is no other area to go. It's all civilian areas. You understand?
Solely on the IDF.
Okay, let me bring in Omar. You've been waiting patiently. Omar, you know, it seems to me there's already now a split in the Israeli war cabinet. Benny Gantz has resigned.
Unbelievable.
You know, people view him as more moderate than Netanyahu and Ben Gvir and Smotrich and so on. That there are other, you know, very right-wing members of that cabinet who, not the war cabinet, but the more general government cabinet, who are pushing Netanyahu to a very bad place, they feel. And I sort of share that view. I don't know where this ends. And Gantz has made it clear he's resigned because he doesn't see any end game. He doesn't understand what life is going to be like at the end of this war. And that should worry all of us. What is your view of where we are with this split now in the Israeli hierarchy?
That is precisely where we are, Piers. I mean, Gantz split off because he understands that there is significant discontent with Netanyahu domestically. There is significant international discontent with him, including from the United States. And he's hoping to reap the rewards if that pressure eventually ramps up to a point that actually pushes Netanyahu out of power for him to be there to basically replace him and become the future leader. But I just want to emphasize the fact that we are precisely here because Israel does not want to end this war. They've set unrealistic goals. They said that they're going to continue this onslaught until Hamas is defeated militarily, until they freed all the hostages militarily. And in the meantime, this onslaught is killing tens of thousands of innocent Palestinians day in and day out. And because Israel can't achieve its goals, the idea that we just have to sit back and watch this horror continue endlessly is completely ridiculous. I mean, I was listening to Emily speak, and all you have to do is just reverse the scenario for just a moment, Piers. Right now, as you and I are speaking, thousands of Palestinians have been kidnapped out of the Gaza Strip and are placed in Israeli detention centers where they are undergoing daily torture. There's a piece in the New York Times exploring the absolutely horrific torture they're undergoing, including acts of sexual abuse that they are enduring. And right now, and by the way, several dozen of them have died in Israeli custody, almost certainly due to the abuse that they are enduring. And if you were to ask a question right now, is Hamas justified in invading Israel to rescue 4 Palestinian detainees out of the thousands that are held by Israel? And what kind of civilian cost would that be worth? Imagine that scenario and imagine that several hundred Israelis were killed in the process. How many people would celebrate the release of those Palestinian prisoners? Well, I would ask you, say, okay, great, the hostages
it's a valid point, but I would also ask you another question, which if we do flip all this round, and it had been the IDF who had gone over the border on October the 7th, murdered in the most horrific, barbaric manner, 1,200.
Yeah, actually they do it, Piers. They've been doing it for the last, 15, 20 years? It's called mowing the lawns. You know that. Why do one day fuck with the Israelis and one day fuck with the Palestinians? You know that Israel, every 2-3 years, they will go and attack and destroy a whole neighborhood, kill 1,200, 2,100, 2,000 Palestinians, and just call it a day. So, I mean, I don't know, man. Is there value in humans, man? I mean, are Jews valued more than Palestinian lives?
Palestinians, the majority of whom were completely innocent people, kidnapped over 200 and brought them back into Israel, and wounded nearly 7,000 more, many of them catastrophically. Are you really saying that anyone on the Gaza Strip would have wanted any limitation put on Hamas for exacting revenge?
You are making an absolutely incredible point, Piers, because you don't have to imagine that scenario. Back in 2014, when Israel initiated a military operation against Gaza, they killed 2,200 Palestinians, including more than 550 Palestinian children. And that does create a sentiment within Gaza of people who want vengeance. And that's why you see some people react to October 7th as saying, what do you expect after everything that Gaza has endured at the hands of Israel? And right now we're putting our finger precisely on the point, is that if we want to compare atrocities back and forth, frankly, I don't think Israel fares very well, because there's no question that Hamas has committed atrocities against Israelis, but Israel's atrocities against Palestinians have been far greater, far more frequent, and extend over a much longer period of time. Okay. And if we're serious, just last point, Piers, that is really important. Yeah. If we're serious about wanting to end these atrocities, you have to deal with the underlying problem. And the underlying problem is that Israel's recipe for Palestinians says they are not allowed to ever be free. They must live under siege and occupation forever. And if they don't like it, they can either leave or be subject to Israel's brutal military operations. And Until Israel starts seeing Palestinians as equal human beings who can live in freedom on their own land, I don't think this thing is going to end. We're going to be stuck
I'll
in this
come to
cycle for a
David
very
in a
long
moment,
time.
just to get a quick reaction to that from Emily.
I actually agree with Omar to a certain extent that if you go back and forth and compare atrocities, it'll be an endless conversation because there's plenty to go back and forth with. I'd also like to add, talking about if you flip the narrative, let's say, which thank God Israel has the Iron Dome, let's say they hadn't. How many civilian casualties on a daily basis would Israel be facing? I also want to point out some serious hypocrisy. Everyone's talking about why can't we equivocate Palestinian lives to Israeli lives? And absolutely we should. Why are Palestinian lives any less or more valuable than an Israeli? Then how come in every ceasefire exchange, for some reason, they equivocate one hostage to 6,000 Palestinians who are arrested for either alleged terrorism or valid terrorism? If you actually want equality and fairness, then let's address the facts. Palestinians live better lives often in Israel than in Palestine itself. It's not a ridiculous point.
There is
how
an
many
imbalance
rockets a
of
day
power
does Hamas
that
send
changes
into
how many.
Israel? Sorry, there's
I'm sorry. That's a complete complete misreading of the situation. The reason why there is a discrepancy in the hostage exchanges is because there is a huge disparity in power. Israel can just go into the Palestinian areas and kidnap thousands upon thousands of Palestinians who are held without charge or trial. If Hamas were capable of doing something like that, you probably would see a one-to-one exchange.
Here we go with the rockets. Here we go.
How many rockets a day? I want him.
I think we're getting into the kind of tit for tat argument, which is one you both highlighted actually in different ways, and I don't want to read it this way.
Come on, Dave. Come on, Dave. Please help us out here, Dave.
The United Nations Security Council on Monday has adopted a U.S. drafted resolution backing a proposal outlined by President Joe Biden for a ceasefire between Israel and Palestinian militants Hamas in the Gaza Strip. I call them terrorists. Russia abstained from the vote. The remaining 14 council members voted in favour, and the US finalised this text on Sunday after 6 days of negotiations among the council. So a sort of significant move there to support President Biden's way to try and bring about a ceasefire. But it does beg the question, what happens next? I mean, I don't think there can be any future here that involves Hamas having any power whatsoever, nor do I think there can be any future with Netanyahu in charge of Israel. And I'm not entirely sure, given the scale of what's been going on over the last 7 months, dwarfing anything really we've seen in many decades, I don't know quite how we get to peace. How do we rebuild trust and get to some sort of peace? I mean, you must have thought about this a lot, Dave, like we all have. What do you think?
Well, I mean, look, it certainly seems like a daunting task, and it seems right now that we're about as far from peace as we could possibly be. I think I may have said this to you when we were doing your show when you were in New York a couple months back. But, you know, like last year, I went and did comedy shows in London, and then I flew over to Ireland and did shows right there. And, you know, you guys are right next door to each other. And there was a time when it seemed like you guys could never achieve peace. You know, the truth is that as many pro-Israelis like to brag about, at Camp David in the late 70s, Israel did make a land deal with Egypt, a land for peace deal, and that peace stuck. They went to war 4 times in a little over 20 years, and they haven't been to war ever since. And so as bad as things do seem right now, I do believe that there's a path where there could be a deal made and there could be a lasting peace. But the bottom line is that what you have to understand, and I appreciate Emily saying that, like, there's been a lot of atrocities on both sides. I don't think anybody would deny that. And I don't think anyone would deny that Hamas has some responsibility for atrocities that they've committed. But the point is, the underlying fact that you can't get away from here is that this is an asymmetrical conflict. Israel has occupied Palestine since 1967. We're not talking about a few months after a war or even a few years after a war. We're talking about longer than the Soviet Union occupied.
By the way, he's Jewish. But he's speaking truth to power. He's spitting bars right now. He's telling you the truth. All we need is honesty. When we have a debate, don't come on. Everybody wants to score points. Wants somebody, you know, I hate that when I see people do that. All we want is pure honesty. Listen to what he says, guys. Listen.
Eastern Europe. And the idea that people say, well, if Hamas just surrendered today, the war would be over. Like, let's even say that's true, which I'm not convinced it is, but let's say that's true. And then what? Live in subjugation forever? I mean, look, the height of the Netanyahu doctrine was 2 weeks before October 7th, when he went to the United Nations with a map of Greater Israel, including Gaza and the West Bank, all being Israel. That was the peak of the Netanyahu doctrine. And what he was telling the world and the Palestinians was, it's over, you lost, we won, we made our deals with the outside Arab world, no one's coming to save you. You live in subjugation forever. And the culmination of that was October 7th.
Okay.
And that's not to remove responsibility from Hamas.
Yeah,
but you cannot remove responsibility from Israel either.
Let Emily respond to that.
What are you going to respond to?
I want to ask David, you just said Israel is occupied. Obviously, you hear that narrative every day. And I often hear chants, specifically here in Manhattan, we don't want 2 states, we want all of 48.
Oh,
when the UN came up with the partition plan,
She heard a chant in Manhattan. Man, that's it. That's public policy, you fucking idiot.
and nobody was happy with that. And they gave land not only to Israel, but Jordan too. I can't help but to think, why does nobody criticize the occupation of Jordanians taking the land from the Palestinians? How come it's only...
Don't you know, even on Twitter, you have these fucking trolls, these Zionist Jewish trolls. They're like, why only Israel? There's a massacre in Sudan. There's a massacre in whatever, in Zimbabwe. Why only when the Jews do it, you guys talk about it? As if it's okay, we're going to give them a pass because everybody does it. These motherfuckers have lost their mind. They are fucking stupid, man.
Only anger once it's the only Jewish state in the entire
Why?
world,
Why only
the entire
us?
globe, that suddenly it's
Victims.
occupation. And also, can somebody enlighten me how we occupied the land that never had a prime minister, never had a government, never had a currency, never had one person with historical ties to the land called Palestine? I just can't wrap my head around this occupation narrative.
Well,
that
let
doesn't exist.
me see if I can help. So the reason why people aren't currently occupied about or currently outraged about Egypt occupying Gaza or Jordan occupying the West Bank or something like that is because it's been over since 1967. So, like, yeah, if you want to go back historically, there were bad things that were done by lots of groups of people. However, since then, it's been the Israelis doing the occupation. That's not a narrative. That's just a description of reality. And as far as your point about, like, that there was never a currency or there was never an official state of Palestine, as I've said before, I just find this to be the most un-American, un-enlightenment way of looking at things. I mean, all you have to do is read the...
It's just comparing facts.
No, it is completely irrelevant. And here's why it's irrelevant. Read the Declaration of Independence. That's all you need to do, and it will completely dispel you of that. The Declaration of Independence starts off right away.
Well, the Middle East is not America.
Hold on, let me just say this.
Let me just...
No, okay, fine, it's not, but these values transcend America. It's the idea of natural rights. Man is born free because these are God-given rights, and governments are just something we institute to protect our rights. And if the government isn't doing a good job of that, then the people have the right and maybe even the duty to overthrow that government. No offense, Pierce. You guys, you've had your wins too, but this one was ours. And so I'm just saying, no, listen, it doesn't matter whether they were dominated by the Ottomans or the British Empire or Jordan or Egypt before then. These are human beings who deserve natural rights, and they have absolutely no rights under Israeli rule and haven't since 1967 due to the Israelis.
What happened before that is irrelevant. Palestinians actually have full rights in Israel, but okay.
Well, I'll tell you what,
Yes,
Emily,
but
on
I'm
that point.
Palestinians in Palestine.
Well, hang on. Here's what I would say about that. It was very clear very soon after October the 7th when Israel was able to control food, energy, water, and things like that, and turn that tap of supply on and off, that actually Palestinians do not have the same free rights as Israelis. Otherwise, Israel wouldn't have had the ability to do that. Now,
but how much of the percentage of that, the water and electricity?
Israel would put up an argument about why they do that, but you can't dispute that was what they're able to do. Omar, there's some more details coming out about this. Well, Omar, I just want to bring you up to speed on the details coming out of this announcement. They're talking about a full and complete ceasefire, the release of hostages held by Hamas, the return of deceased hostages' remains, and the exchange of Palestinian prisoners. The plan includes 3 phases that would end with a multi-year reconstruction plan for Gaza, which has been largely destroyed due to the fighting. The second phase includes a permanent end to hostilities, as well as full withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza. This is according to a text of the US draft resolution. I mean, first of all, do you welcome the broad brushstrokes of that statement?
Certainly do, Piers. I want to address this directly, but I just have to go back to just one thing that Emily had said, because I think it's really, really important not to gloss over it. when we talk about Israel's occupation of the Palestinian territories, when you look at settler colonialism in the United States and the fact that Native Americans were pushed off of their land, nobody cares that Native Americans did not have an officially recognized government or what currency they had or this or that. These are people who are living on their land who are being pushed out by an occupying force, and that's all that matters. And what's unique about the Israeli occupation of the Palestinian territories, particularly in the West Bank today, is the fact that it's settler colonial expansion. Palestinians are being systematically pushed out of their land and out of their homes, so Israel can build more and more settlements to take over Palestinian areas. And 80% of water in the West Bank is taken to be used by Israel and by the settlers. This is Palestinian water. Every Israeli policy, every inch of the West Bank that Israel takes over by force, every drop of water that Israel takes is a violation of international law. These are war crimes that Israel is committing. So to pretend to conflate all of that with whatever historical examples there have been of other occupations and not, you're missing the point that Israel is actively replacing Palestinians with Israelis
but let's also,
as an effort to confine
all right,
Palestinians
but let's
into
also
smaller
get
and
to the
smaller
point
areas.
of this breaking news.
I also
about,
want to address that America did not
Sure.
give the land back.
Okay,
so
but
I
want to move.
Let's move on.
Okay, but I want to talk about the.
You know what's the good news, guys? Israel, they're all fucking dumb. Thank God we found out. Now, they sent this idiot. Well, you know, we didn't give the land to the native Indians. Yeah, the native Indians were running around naked chasing buffaloes. Palestine, you had metropolis, you had museum, you had college, you had universities. It's a different motherfucking day. Wake up.
So you've all had a good chance to talk. I want to talk about specifically this proposal and whether you think this is the kind of framework we need now to get to peace, and whether you believe that anyone affiliated to Hamas can have any role in any kind of government in Gaza going forward.
Of course.
Sure. Starting with the ceasefire, I think it's quite obvious and inevitable that a ceasefire is going to be the only way out of the mess that we're currently in, unless people are happy to just sit back and watch a genocide unfold for year after year. And the only problem right now with a ceasefire is whether there is a question about whether we're going to move from a temporary one to a permanent one and what that negotiation in between entails. And the problem is that Prime Minister Netanyahu has made it absolutely clear that there will not be a permanent ceasefire until Hamas is completely defeated. So he's insisting effectively that there's not going to be a ceasefire because he can't defeat Hamas militarily, and so the slaughter is going to continue indefinitely. So to the extent that the international community and the United States can apply meaningful pressure on Israel, and Netanyahu in particular, to say knock off this delusional fantasy that you're going to have an epic win beyond the fact that you've completely destroyed the Gaza Strip and killed 40,000 people, enough is enough. It's time to put an end to this onslaught and just have an exchange of prisoners as hostages and move on with life. As for the question about Hamas, whether Hamas can have a role in the future or whether Netanyahu can, I don't think that's a particularly important question. I think Israelis can sort out who leads them. People in Gaza can figure that out. What's important for us as a third party sitting on the outside, be it the United States or the rest of the international community, is to say that support for foreign military occupation should not continue. It is not our role to decide who rules Palestinians or who rules Israelis or who's in the government and who's not. It is our role to say that as long as Israel continues occupying Palestinian land, besieging Palestinians, denying them their most basic and fundamental rights, Israel should not receive another penny of U.S. from the United States in military funding, and not another veto and all this unconditional diplomatic support that the U.S. provides for Israel to do whatever it wants, violate international law left and right without any consequence.
Conversely, what about all the money that Hamas has been receiving, billions of dollars, a lot of it via Israel, presumably by the same yardstick, you would like to see zero funding going into Hamas?
Unquestionably. Unquestionably, human rights organizations have been absolutely clear about the fact that nobody should be sending weapons either to Hamas or to Israel, and I agree with that entirely. Fortunately, I live in a country that does not supply Hamas, so it's very easy for me to say stop U.S. funding for Hamas because it doesn't exist in the first place. What does exist is U.S. funding for the Israeli government and the monstrous atrocities that they are committing day in and day out, and that's what we need to have change. And once that changes, once Israel no longer enjoys this impunity that the U.S. gives them, they will find themselves in a position where they have to negotiate in good faith and to recognize that Palestinians are an equal human being who have to get their fundamental rights, that they are entitled to every inch of independence and dignity and basic human rights that Israelis enjoy. Until Israel treats Palestinians differently, we're not going to have an end to this conflict, and that's what needs to change.
Thank you all very much. That was a great debate. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, it was. That was perfect, right? Oh, who's here? Oh, sorry, I didn't see who's there. Hello, what's up? What's up? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I wasn't paying attention to the. I had it on full screen. Not all natives were uncivilized. Yeah, Terry Stranger. No, the idea, what I'm saying is that you can't compare the Palestinians to the native Indians. The native Indians did not believe in property. They didn't know what ownership of property meant. The native Indians were free moving people, like spiritually free. Is that what I'm trying to say here? So when they were buying Manhattan from them, they were laughing. It's like, what are you buying? What is this thing that people could buy land? So native Indians had no understanding of private property. They had an idea where they could hunt, that nobody should bother with their hunting ground. But the idea, they had no sense. But if you go to 1948 Palestine, they had cities, they had the metropolises, they had mayors, they had union leaders. I mean, there was a people living in there. And Jews were living there alongside of Jews, native Arab Jews, and native Christians were living there. And it was a harmonic way of living at that time. Until the East European Jews came in from Europe, and shit started changing. Sorry, did not hear you. Palestine can't catch a break. Anybody want some? Who's this? Terry Strange. I apologize. I did not see your writing. My fault. I'm a bit under the weather. Not all natives deserve land. You understand? It is what it is. Are you still here? If you're still here, right here. All right. So I wanted to show you just the thinking of. I'm going to explain it to you, because sometimes, you have to be careful what you say. There's two groups in the United States that you cannot, two groups in the United States that you cannot say things. If you say something, it sounds right. If you say LBGT, you got to turn around. If you say the word Jewish, you have to turn around as if you're saying something wrong, and you're not. This is, I hope this is, okay. There you go. This is Morning Joe. Okay. Let me show you the whole thing. So I will not. Where am I? Where are you, Omar? All right. This is Morning Joe, early in the morning. Morning Joe has become what Fox and Friend was to Donald Trump. Remember, they used to make fun of Donald Trump. Oh, look at him. He listens to Fox News all day. Now, this is Johnny Dutch. He was there. And remember when they had this thing where when Ilhan Omar said it's about the Benjamin, where American Jews, if you tell them, well, listen, do you have Israeli citizens? How could you question our loyalty? This is an anti-Semitism trope. Everything you say is a fucking trope. Anything you say is a fucking trope. Okay, this is what he had. Listen to the thinking of his mind. So he's talking about it in Morning Joe.
War is ugly, but when in the case of this instance, when the hostages are being held by a Palestinian, case of this.
So I'm so glad to have you on, because this is a particularly viral monologue.
And obviously war is ugly, but when in the case of this.
Yeah, war is ugly. When you kill like 200 Palestinians, war is war. War is ugly. You get collateral damage. But if the Palestinian killed, 300 Jews on October 7th, that's the worst massacre since the Holocaust. That's like 9/11. Remember they used to come on TV and say, that's about 9/11, a nation of 10 million people losing 12. Now, let's say Gaza, a people of 2 million people losing 40,000 people. That's like a fucking 9/11. They don't use that no more. You're like, could we do the math with this too?
This instance, when the hostages are being held by a Palestinian journalist, a civilian, and a Palestinian doctor, a civilian. These are not civilians. These are Hamas ambassadors. And yes, there are innocent civilians, but I think back to also the hundreds and thousands of rabid Gazans as they dragged a corpse through Gaza, cheering, hysterical with glee and joy. And
remember, Joe Biden watches this program every morning. So this guy trying to be like, I'm fair, but remember when they dragged that lady? So, I mean, if we kill 200, oh, fuck you.
it's just, once again, the media coverage is, and these were 4 hostages that were taken on a day that 1,200 Israelis were slaughtered, maimed, decapitated, killed in the most gruesome way. And I don't know if Americans had 4 hostages that were taken and we had a rescue mission, and yes,
they were safe, they were healthy, not to condone hostage taking, but they were not in tunnels. Hamas is trying to give them back. A matter of fact, Israel, you see, they don't say that. These dishonest motherfuckers. Israel has killed more hostages, 42 of them, than Hamas. Why? Because they're bombing them. Even the hostages, these 4 hostages, when they came home, they said the only thing we fear was Israeli planes. They were afraid of being killed by the Israeli army, by the bombing. They were not afraid of the Palestinians. They were living in these people's home with their wives and their kids. They were actually eating what they eat. They sleep in the same house. You understand? This is the difference. They were treated as humanely as possible. Not the Palestinians you kidnapped, and some of them, you tied up their legs so bad and their arms so bad that you prevented the blood flow. You had to ampute their legs and their arms, man. Fuck you. You are monsters. You will always be monsters. You have shown your face now. It's too late.
There were 270 casualties, and many of those Palestinian casualties are deep, deep, deep sympathizers of Hamas. Yeah. Would the coverage be the same way? Would anybody be criticizing the rescue message?
Complaining about the coverage. What the fuck are you talking about? The media has been pro-Israeli from day one. You complaining? Who said that? Who?
Or would it be truly one of heroism? But I do think we have to start to really talk honestly about the definition of civilian casualties. And this is against the backdrop of, even having said that, we're the lowest.
This is against the backdrop of 40,000 civilians dead. Okay, go ahead.
Civilian to combatant casualty in the history of war. But when I saw those headlines, and it was demeaning to the rescue mission, and obviously there were some real innocent people, but civilian.
He was upset that the headline said 200 Palestinians were killed. He don't want them to mention the casualties of the Palestinians because he don't want the people to know what's going on. You understand? That's his only complaint. But on October 7, that tragedy we had, but we keep on mentioning that tragedy. But for mass media, I don't know how they mentioned it. I think they could not ignore it anymore. You understand?
We got to really delve into that word.
Donnie, I've seen.
All right, go fuck yourself, you fucking filthy animal. This is a problem with this fucking thing. The Palestinians are fucking dumb. Sorry about that. The Palestinians are fucking, they always have to negotiate with a Jewish American. They're biased. During the Clinton administration, they had a guy named Dennis Ross who was supposed to be the United States envoy to the peace process. And he was a Zionist. It turns out he wrote a lot of books after that. He retired. If I was a Palestinian, I'm going to say, listen, no offense here, but I don't want any Jewish American negotiating with us. Not that they're bad or anything. I just, they're going to be biased, not because they want to be biased, but, Israel, they're Jewish. So what can you say that some of those fucking red-blooded Americans, you must have some Christians there or some other, because, like Anthony Blinken, this fucking piece of shit. When after October 10, when he went to Israel, he said, I have come to you as a Jewish citizen, to Netanyahu. This is the Secretary of State of the United States of America, the most powerful nation in the fucking world, is telling a foreign leader that he has come to him as a Jew, not as an American Secretary of State. How can you trust this guy to negotiate your shit? You understand? You have to speak the truth once in a while, man. You can't be living a fucking lie. Well, we're gonna send you a group of Jews to negotiate with you about their homeland, Palestine and Israel. No. The Palestinians say, okay, listen, what I'm saying is facts. I mean, if you send me to negotiate for the Palestine as an American, and I'm Arab, I will be biased for the Palestinian. It's just human nature. It's human nature. You're gonna be biased for your own people. It's just you can't help that. And don't fucking try to pretend this shit. Oh well, these people aren't American citizens. They have Israelis. They have Israeli passports. You understand what I'm saying here? You cannot. If I was a Palestinian, I'm gonna say, listen. Right now we don't even have. We don't have any leadership right now. Our president is half asleep. Joe Biden is a fucking zombie. What today they did a UN resolution approving the United States peace initiative. You don't need a United Nations. You don't need the UN resolution. You're paying everybody, motherfucker. You just tell them that's what we want right here, motherfucker. Stop fighting. 1, 2, 3. Israel, if you don't agree, no weapons, no more money. Hamas, if you don't agree, we will bomb the data out of you now. We will do it. And they're gonna. Why do you need the UN resolution? This is all a waste of time. This is all fucking theater. This is all theater. What they doing right now. Remember about a month ago they had a UN resolution to stop for a ceasefire, and the United States abstained just because they've been vetoing everything just to look good. Then after the vote, oh, this is a non-binding resolution. It does nobody. It's not legal. It's just this is what's going on. The United States of America need to take control of its own fucking policy, man. That's it. You can't have these motherfuckers running around fucking Washington doing whatever they want. Jack Sullivan, that fucking what are you supposed to be, like the advisor, the national security advisor? The only reason Bobby Biden has him because he has an Irish last name, Sullivan. That's it. He's a fucking kid. He's about 45, 40 years old. You're gonna send him to talk to Netanyahu, the most fucking scumbag in the world, the most conniving diplomat in the world. This is the problem, man. Hey, let me see this. I don't know. I know you guys hate videos, but
taxpayer money going to commit genocide. I want my taxpayer money coming here to help me have childcare, to help me pay for my housing, to help me, develop myself in terms of workforce, to help me.
Hold on. This is Jamal Bowman. He's a U.S. congressman from New York. AIPAC, the American Israeli Political Committee, the Jewish lobby, the American Jewish lobby, because it's not a foreign lobby, let's call it what it is spending $25 million for him to lose his seat. This is unfucking believable that they will spend $25 million on a congressional seat out of 435 seats. Shows you this is called flexing power. They're flexing their muscles, man. The Israeli lobby is flexing their muscles. They have the money, man. There he is. He's going to lose, poor guy.
Pay for education, transportation, quality of life. We have the biggest wealth inequality in this country since the Gilded Age, right now. And in my district, when you look at every outcome, health outcomes, education outcomes, economic outcomes, wealth, Black and Latino people are at the bottom. Black's way bottom. And so that money that we spend on genocide can come here to help us.
Yeah. There you have it. Very, very fucking easy. You understand? There shouldn't be any problem. All right, so we had a good show today. Did you guys like it or what? Did you like the show? I feel so bad that I didn't respond to my friend over here. I really, really, really feel so bad. So we had a good show today, right? There's 14 motherfuckers of you. When we began, there was only 5, right? Now all of a sudden, everybody shows up when I'm about to finish. Why do you do that for? Let's see if I go. Okay, we have time. We have time. Now, have you ever guys heard of a guy named? See, I'm gonna get in trouble right now because I have to be careful how I speak. Okay. Do you know who this guy is? This guy is called, his name is Dave Rubin. Dave Rubin used to be a leftist. All of a sudden, I left the left. You know how they do that movement. Now the problem with him is he's a bit racist against blacks and against Arabs and Muslims and all that stuff. And he's a homosexual guy who before had no rights. He's married. He bought 2 kids. He bought them. It cost him like $200,000. You could buy kids in America. He got his sperm, got a woman, bought some eggs, and boom. It's like going to the fucking grocery store. Now, this is him. I have to speak like that about him because he's a fucking scumbag. If you don't speak like that about him, who are you going to speak about? Let me see if this is it, yeah?
This government should not
fire directly at people.
I cannot fucking find the video. You know, all of a sudden I'm coming.
So then you have to think, did they all?
Okay, hold on. He keeps on, every place he goes, he keeps on mentioning this.
So, and then of course that the appeal probably will not go well because, as you know, the 5 Supreme Court judges in New York all happen to be black females. I don't know if you know this, but you know, when they appeal this thing, it gets appealed to the Supreme Court of New York, obviously not to the Supreme Court of the United States. The Supreme Court of New York has 5 black female judges. The appeal to go to the Supreme Court of New York, because it's a New York trial, we showed you video about a month ago. It's 5 black women because of diversity. But it's basically statistically impossible to have 5 black female Supreme Court justices.
Guess what? There isn't. There isn't. This guy's a fucking douchebag. He just have this idea. Let's say if there were 5 white women. I mean, is there a difference? The New York has 4 appeal courts. There's 4 districts because we have like 60 counties. So in one of these New York City, yes, they happen to be, the appellate court has 5 black women judges. The issue here, they're not the Supreme Court of New York. So the whole idea, he's complaining because they're black, they're not going to be fair. And he keeps on fucking pounding that shit home. You know, there are 5 black women, you know, those women, you know how those black people are. These are the women here. They are fair. They used to be lawyers. They passed the test. They are good Americans. And he keeps on fucking mentioning the word. There are 5 black women in the New York Supreme Court. So Donald Trump is not going to get a fair shot. They're not even the Supreme Court. And even if they were, so what? You know what I'm saying? So what? It's so strange coming from a gay man who had no fucking rights. And if it wasn't for these women, probably he wouldn't have a husband humping his ass every night. Excuse my language right there. You know, guys, I'm fucking tired. You guys came late, man. I got to take some fucking energy drinks before I come here. Got to go to the bathroom. Got to do a lot of shit. You know, man, we had a good show. You should have been here early. It's your fault for that. I love you all. Anyway, thank you all for your support. You know, sometimes I say a lot of, I hope I don't get in trouble. I don't mean it in a bad way. But stay away from this fucking idiot right here who wants to take away your fucking TikTok.
But we need to talk about TikTok. TikTok, if you will, it is the 24/7 news channel of so many of our young people, and it's like Al Jazeera on steroids, amplifying and intensifying the anti-Semitism and the anti-Zionism with no repercussion. But we need.
I gotta go, guys. Bye.